Welcome to the Green Lab Futures Talking Social Innovation podcast with your host, me, Scott Douglas. We'll be bringing you the conversations that we are having with industry, education and the community to help us develop and shape our views and understanding on the future roles of social innovation. We hope you enjoy. Welcome to our one-on-one chat with Carmel Riley from Carmel Riley Consultants, Social Enterprise. Thank you for joining us today, Carmel. We want to jump in and have a bit of a discussion around how you started in the social enterprise space, your motivations and driving factors that have led you into that space that you are right now with your consulting company that you're running down in Gippsland. Do you want to maybe just start off with the point as to which you started to learn more about the social enterprise space?
So there's kind of a parallel story, but I will start with the Executive MBA that I was completing with QUT a couple of years ago. It was a time in Gippsland where we didn't have a local MBA option. So at the time I was really seeking for a program that would be delivered face-to-face, that would fit in with, a pretty full-on schedule, and that also focused in on complexity, was kind of where my interests were at the time. So through completing that program, we had opportunity to look into global strategy. And it was at that point where I was introduced to the concept around creating shared value. So I would say I was aware of the term social enterprise. I was aware, I'd worked many, many years in community and not-for-profits and government. I knew a little bit about social procurement, but I don't think I'd kind of joined all the dots. Now, the concept around creating shared value and learning about how that differed from corporate social responsibility, that concept of being able to deliver on both economic and social outcomes for community transformation really, really resonated with me, kind of probably more than I thought it would. So that's kind of where I guess the concepts got seeded, but during that program as well, I was not in a position to do the international study tour. That was the standard model of the Exec MBA. And so there was an opportunity to broker relationships between the Graduate Business School and a intermediary called Impact, who were looking at for-purpose investment for large-scale social impact. And through those relationships, there was an opportunity to work with quite a phenomenal not-for-profit social enterprise who were looking at scaling their impact. And so I was brought in, I guess, in like a consulting capacity under the MBA program to see what level of strategic advisory I would be able to offer them. Now, when we had the first meeting, the sense was, maybe you could project manage our entry into the Brisbane market. They're a digitisation business and work specifically for individuals with disability to be able to give them mainstream and award wage employment. That's kind of the ethos behind the business. But we realised quite quickly that with a particular skill set and experience and so forth that I had and access to different kind of communities and expertise, that we could offer them quite a different project, was actually looking at how they could look at their national rollout. What does it look like when you have a passion-driven and very personal founding story, and when you're suddenly scaling that nationally? What are the risks and opportunities that come along with that? How do you keep, the heart of your organisation whilst also having to create, I guess, efficiencies of scale, and how do you connect at the very local level at the small community level when you have that national framework. So that was a phenomenal experience, but it really gave me intimate inside knowledge into the ethos around social enterprise and what it actually takes from a leadership perspective, and where those almost the paradox can kind of sit sometimes in terms of when you are very passion driven and you do have these very personal stories that drive your everyday, that can have some negative consequences in business and traction with market. And so that ability to live, provide advice, and learn in that space sat with me. So I think it was very subconscious at the time. At that time, I didn't know that I was going to be founding my own social enterprise.
And that was still a part of like your exec MBA experience, wasn't it? Which is like, to me, that makes that actually gives me chills on the back of my neck that was your experience within that program, because it says a lot about the time and effort that the Queensland's putting into their social enterprise ecosystem, which we just talked about a minute ago. It's really thriving, and it's got a lot of positivity building off programs like the success of what you've just talked about, which is really, I think, a real attribute to what they are doing up here. And we're lucky that we've got you in Gippsland. How did you do that learning experience? Was it remote and intensive? Did you have to travel up and down for some of those?
Yeah, so it was a really big commitment, and it was a really big family commitment as well. So I have a number of people who are really hungry to get into further study that come and want to chat with me, because they say, how do you do that? How do you do the study and the home life and the family life and the business life and make it all happen? So it was a really big investment for our whole family. It required me to travel, pre-COVID times when it was easier to travel. I would travel up to Brisbane once a month for 2 years. So there was no break in the study. Really, it was kind of 6-week blocks. You do a couple subjects at a time. The project with Jigsaw, the social impact project, went over a number of months at the same time as my fellow kind of cohort were doing their international study tours. So it was a mix of face-to-face, remote, online tutorials. The few times that I couldn't get up face-to-face, we had some interesting options at the time, again, because I think unis were still getting used to hybrid arrangements again, that, I guess give QUT credit that they were still a few steps ahead of what was to come globally with the pandemic. So, there were a few hiccups, but it was really quite critical for me, because I developed a whole lot of those enabling digital skills. So when I did start my own business, we've always operated in a hybrid environment. And a lot of that is kind of the unintended benefits of study, that you get exposure and familiarity with a whole lot of different ways of learning and engaging, and different digital tools.
Yeah, and that is a really good point. Thank you, QUT, for that learning experience as well, because I think that it is the organisations that have dabbled in the hybrid space that have built that resilience across not just their current cohorts, but their alumni that have been able to adapt. Like you've just said there, that's a really amazing component to bring to Gippsland, where we've got a big connection, say, from, I classify Pakenham as Gippsland still, all the way down to Mallacoota. The broadband is quite, we'll say that's quite scratchy. Mobile phone reception, I'm hanging in there right now with mine, but to be able to have that hybrid means that you can always have that contact and connectivity, which is critical for a business in the 21st century, 2021.
Yeah.
So,
and it's also, particularly when you're bootstrapping or you've got limited resourcing anyway, it is such a more affordable way, be able to keep your business overheads at a minimum as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to jump into a bit more detail around your startup, Carmel, and how that came about, and kind of where it's up to at the moment, because there are some really exciting components that I love to hear about when you talk about it. So I'll pass it over to you.
Sure. So we're a couple of years in. on the business now. And I shared with you before, I didn't have a set plan when this started. I certainly didn't know I was going to become a social enterprise, and I certainly didn't know that the business would be more than me. It started out as a selfie video on LinkedIn saying, "Hi world, I'm kind of an exec gig freelancer. Don't know, what's out there, but I'm available for consulting work." And it grew from there. The critical part of the story about where I realised I needed to reimagine what was going on was that I had developed a kind of an informal mentoring relationship with one of the customer service folk bus drivers at the airport, which is important because I was doing that QUT travel. So there was a regularity of that routine. And anyway, that story basically goes that the gentleman's name's Ibrahim. He is one of my associate consultants now. And we got to know each other a little bit, and he was seeking support for trying to get his foot in the employment market of public sector. He is a person that had phenomenal experience, phenomenal qualifications, and over 100 job applications, and couldn't get a foot in the door, couldn't get any feedback on why he wasn't reaching interview stage. And he hadn't lost hope, but he was really, really grappling at what else could be done. The day that I knew I needed to do different was when I had run out of ideas for him and had got to the point where someone had suggested to me that he needed to change his name on his CV to try and reduce some of that recruitment bias that might have been affecting him. So that really is a really important part of the story. And I always say to my team, I never want to talk on their behalf. It's their right, with all respect to them, that they share their story. But Ibrahim asks me to tell that part of the story because he said that that's a shared story. That is a shared story for us. So from that point, I basically piloted an opportunity to bring some of these talented job seekers on in a project capacity and go, if we've got a specific project to work on, I know the sort of transferable skills that I'm looking for. So I guess there's a bit of my mentality is that it's not about the qualification you hold, it's about the skills and experience that you bring, and with support we can help you apply those into different industries. And so that kind of is where the story started. So we piloted with an initial project where Ibrahim and another local member in our community, Daria, came on board to deliver my community engagement function. And in reality, what did that mean? We went together, we were doing interviews and participatory evaluations in social enterprise. And what it gave me was an absolute ability to get diversity of perspective in evaluation. So already by bringing these individuals in and paying them at market rates from the outset, by the way, because I truly believe they had the skills and experience that they deserved that from the outset. But it gave me such a diversity of perspective, because as a sole evaluator, you really are bound by the limitations of your own cognitive biases. So when you can kind of triangulate, like get some of those different perspectives in right from the start, we're already delivering a better research and evaluation service. So that's how it started. And over time, we were getting more and more projects coming along that I was able to bring them on for. And at the same time, I'd started doing some work in community and training and development. And same sort of thing, it was adult education. You never know who's going to be sitting around the table at those sorts of courses. And I had opportunity to bring Joanne and Robin on, who were two previous students of mine in a Learn Local course, who I realised very, very quickly it was really curious what was going on in their lives and so forth, that this was, I guess, the place for them to be to support their employment journey. So it was very serendipitous, I guess, from my perspective. And Joanne and Robin, again, very diversified skill sets, but both, had opportunity to come on board with the consultancy and actually then, be able to create those employment pathways. So it was absolutely an emergent complex theory and practice. I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. We weren't going to know until we tested, reviewed, and then just kept adapting to create the model. But, now a couple of years in, we definitely have what I call a wraparound consulting model, where you have that senior consultant that has a level of diversity of technical skills, as well as the people and self-leadership piece, who are really keen to be able to provide a mentor sort of role. And then the wraparound of associate consultants for a period of time, where they basically get the mentorship, the access to networks and the local experience and referees to support their transition, whether that be into more substantial employment within the consultancy, within their own business brand, or in mainstream employment. And we're seeing that impact in action now with our team. So it's pretty exciting.
Absolutely, it's exciting. I get excited when I hear about it again and again, because I love that idea of having the wraparound support to help people not only perform their job that they've just been recruited for, but to also support them to be empowered to take the next step. Because we know that there's a lot of people that will come through into different roles, and they may not get access to that mentoring, whether it be on their job, within their job, or just from the people around them, because it's quite a ruthless space. But when you've got people that are there for you, helping you build and develop and grow, I think we need to see more of that in the workplaces, and whether that be the full-time to part-time environment or the gig economy, so that people can continue to grow and develop there.
And, I think it's really important to say as well, like, it's not all roses. So, one of the really important, I guess, elements for me in what makes this business model work is around the employee engagement and the employer branding. So what I mean by that is that we do need to work really hard to go, yep, these are all, the perks and what we can offer. But then there's a reality check of what this sort of work is like, and the sort of, like me as an individual, like how is it working? How is it working with a founder? How is it working with someone that, in order for this model to work, you have to be able to let go of control. But in the early days, you also need to be the contingency. So if things don't work out, you still need to know that you can deliver. And so I guess I have been really, really deliberate from that employee engagement perspective, the expectation management, that recognition of psychological contracts, as well as, either the employment or contractor arrangements, and always, I guess, keeping it real in that space. So yes, it's going to be a really supported environment. You're going to have access to the mentoring that you're looking for to thrive in the role. And at the same time, we're a flexible work environment, particularly, that's important for me in terms of, the career-loving parent sort of population. Flexibility is kind of a non-negotiable, but that means there are going to be times where we all are, heads down, bums up, working really, really hard. And then there are times where we can, back that off, and there, that ability for connection and, being able to talk about, mental health and well-being as part of our everyday and not a nice to have, has been really important part of all of this for it to work, in my opinion.
And if you were to give us a snapshot into the future, Carmel, of things that you are comfortable talking about within your business, where do you see yourself in the next, say, 2 to 5 years?
We're really at the moment, focusing right now on the branding and marketing. So because at the moment, we're very proud of the client pipeline we have, and we have great word of mouth, and we're, getting well positioned for more social procurement and government tender opportunities. So that's kind of the next few months, and we will see a rebrand and a whole lot of digital marketing and digital storytelling coming out to help give people a much better insight into our actual commercial services as well. I can passionately talk around the transitional employment model, but at the end of the day, we actually deliver really good business. We, across evaluation and strategy and business development and governance models, and particularly in that sort of complex environment, a lot of innovation work as well. So that's the number one for us, is that people who know me and know the team know what we do, but we don't communicate it brilliantly. So that's kind of number one. Secondly, has been around, well, how do we kind of curate this ecosystem for potential, scale of the work that we do, both in terms of commercial and the social impact piece. So we know that there's a large number of talented professional job seekers who have been facing barriers to employment. We equally know that that employers are really struggling to access talent at the moment. So we're continually nurturing relationships and starting to market our social enterprise insourcing model as a way of being able to bridge that gap between great employers and talented job seekers. In addition to that, we've really just been focusing on strategic partnerships and capability to be able to elevate that idea of a digital ecosystem where we're not just supporting, 5, 10, 20 individuals, we're able to scale that to a much higher level. And we certainly have had some interest in the work that we're doing in that space, in particular with multicultural community and New Australians as well. We've got some other organisations that work in that space that are really keen to collaborate with us. And I guess the point of difference is that our model doesn't make the assumption that when you're coming into a new area that you have to start from the bottom and work your way up. Because, there's a whole lot on an emotional and personal level that people go through for that journey. And for some people, they're in an environment where that'll work really well for them. But we're also offering an opportunity, as I said, where you can take that transferable skills and experience and actually support professional job seekers in at a kind of a more I don't want to use the word appropriate, that's not the right word, but a better suited level of industry and employment. So that's exciting. And there's no doubt that we're getting more and more requests from employers who are struggling, saying, we know you know people. And we're not a recruitment agency, and I don't foresee us as a recruitment agency. However, that idea of a digital platform where we can be supporting some collective value add between employers and job seekers, watch this space.
Yeah, which is awesome, because it's this. I think this notion that we've lived with, and especially in Gippsland for the past decade, that people get a job and they're going to be in that job for the next decade and then the decade beyond, and professional development is okay, but it's only if it's 100% relevant to the promotion that's coming after that job that I've had for the decade. And I really feel that as a disruptor to another disruptor, this becomes the opportunity that sits not just in Gippsland. Gosh, it's kind of there across Australia.
Well, it is. I think it really is around the power of micro enterprise as well. And I was reading an opinion piece on the Latrobe Valley transition today and about how the answer's big employers, and I guess my personal sense is, well, it depends. And I think there does need to be a mix in community because everyone will have different options that are going to work best for them. But I certainly see the power of reimagining micro enterprise, that ability of small change, small impact for big change. It's that whole idea of a multiplier effect as well. We know that the value that can be put into community in this sort of model is far bigger than it looks at first glance.
Absolutely. And I'll wrap up our chat today. And if there was a parting, something that you could leave our listeners with as a source of inspiration, something that may have been inspiring for yourself, Carmel?
For me, it's this analogy, and I know it's not the neatest analogy, but people are so quick to say you better drop in the ocean. And I like to reframe it as, well, a drop in the ocean, all of a sudden, when you've got rain on a lake, the ripples are just, never ending. So the power of reframe and being able to look for opportunities when problems seem really audacious and overwhelming, I guess that, that looking for that ability to reframe your thinking can be the difference between a failed business and thriving.
Wow, that's awesome. I love the reframe. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Carmel. I really appreciate you making the time to chat with us. Thanks very much, and we wish you all the best, and all the best with your startup, Carmel Riley Consulting, Social Enterprise.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Scott.